Hi everyone, welcome to part 4 of this hybrid platforms trend series where we're talking about taming the complexity of cloud into the future along with Cisco and Nutanix. In our previous videos, we've talked about the infrastructure layer and the cloud operating layer that enables us to build them modern applications and then databases and run our workloads efficiently. Now we're going to dig into how do we bring the operational simplicity, the automation, and how do we extend all of this into the cloud as well to give you this unified operating model. And to start that journey, which is a two-part journey, the first part being with Nutanix and the second part being with Cisco, we're going to hand over to Darren, who's going to take us through Nutanix Cloud Manager. So Darren, tell us what this is all about.
Thanks, Rob. So earlier on, I spoke of Nutanix and much around the Nutanix Cloud Platform. And this time, I want to break into the Nutanix Cloud Manager. So some more distinct areas around how we focus on an operating model for this cloud architecture. So intelligent operations is something we focus a lot on. If we think about how we have our operations teams today within our organizations, perhaps sat in front of consoles, manually reacting to tasks, looking at tickets from a help desk system to complete, or to troubleshoot or to fix something. But that's all very well during the working day and if the skills and the people are available. But what happens out of hours? And what about if it's an organization that's a global, where it's running 365, where there are huge amounts of infrastructure that's been deployed? We need some more intelligence, and we really take that on board. So we are able to observe much of what's happening within the environment, whether that's virtual machines, the storage, the containers, everything that's happening, we have great visibility on. And we can define triggers and be dynamic about what's happening. We can define windows of what's acceptable, maybe during peak hours at the end of a month. It's okay for a workload to run at 95%. We don't need to send a call out to someone to dial in to have a quick look and see what's happening. So we can define and be intelligent and be very pragmatic about what's going on. There's obviously guardrails, and we can do some automation and some use of machine learning to actually assist with this as well. But moving on, self-service. I touched on that briefly. We're looking to empower elements of the business now. We want to take away some of the time-consuming tasks from the IT organization themselves. So as an example, and we see this a lot within our conversations at Nutanix, development teams really want to get hold of environments, make multiple copies because they have a job to do to develop newer products to make them more competitive within the business world. So they should be able to ask just through a web console and say, I want a copy of this, clone me this database, give me more copies of this data. And they can do that without having to interact with IT. So it speeds up that time of operations and development. No longer is there a dependency on the IT team. But we need to be very careful. We don't want them to start copying and cloning data and sending it all around the environment, because of course that's where challenges and problems happen. We hear about this in the media, where incorrect sets of data get out and things are leaked and breached. So governance is very key on this, and we can provide guardrails to ensure that data doesn't reside in locations where it's not permitted, so it can't be let out into the wild. And of course there's elements of cost. If we keep cloning and copying all these environments, it's taking up storage, it requires compute and RAM. So let's just be very mindful of what people are allowed to have. We can do cost projections as well. We can even perform elements of governance around conformity for known certifications as well, PCI, HIPAA, and the list goes on. I think we have 250 or so out of the box. Plus you can define your own as well. The last one I want to talk about is around our security story. Nutanix is natively secure out of the box. You don't deploy appliances that monitor and look down. Everything is out of the box secure from day one. We're able to scan environments, of course. We can provide microsegmentation. It's a whole wealth of things we do there. And we can generate reports as well, insights into what's going on. If there's drift in configuration, we report that immediately. If patches should be applied, we report that immediately. So we do take the whole environment incredibly seriously, much like the public cloud providers do themselves, but it's all under your control, and you have great visibility and insights into running a Nutanix environment. I've talked about software, but of course, software needs to run on hardware. So I want to talk to Neil now and hand over to him around what these integrations are. So Neil, over to you, please.
Thanks, Darren. We need to have a way in which we can manage the fleet that underpins the software elements that Darren's spoken about. In the case of Cisco, this is something called Intersight. And Intersight is a software as a service platform. And it is designed to reduce operational complexity, to be able to see and visualize everything that sits within the fleet, to control all of those elements, and ultimately to automate them as well. Let's start with the visibility piece. Intersight can see every claimed server. It can go beyond that and look at some other third-party elements that are associated with this. But in focusing in on what we're doing from a Nutanix perspective, we can see the entire estate. So whether that is edge devices, remote office, branch offices, data centers, it's all visible within one single place. And having all of that in one place allows us to then have far more effective control. Visibility is key to all of this. Control then allows us to look at how we standardize our operations across that entire fleet. How do we make sure that all of them are being kept up to date from security advisory perspectives, firmware updates, any upgrades that are required? How do we make sure that we're doing hardware compatibility list checks to make sure that they're capable of running the version of Nutanix that the customer wants to be able to run? How do we keep an eye on things like energy consumption? What do we do when we want to move a particular Nutanix instance to a new device? Part of that idea that we talked about in the initial video around Cisco and its platforms was that our ability to reuse, part of that sustainability agenda. I don't have to worry about what that next piece of hardware I might want to bring into play is. If I'm doing an expansion operation, I need a bit more compute nodes because I can use the concept of what we have as a service profile, the profile that is a Nutanix profile, and bring that up on that new piece of hardware. We know that it will behave and perform exactly the same as the other elements of our estate. And control goes beyond that. How do I actually automate this? How do I bring this platform into my overall infrastructure automation story? How do I do that without introducing another layer of complexity? This is the co-development work that goes on between Cisco and Nutanix. Our ability to create that persona that is Nutanix, have that pre-validated and pre-tested in our lab environments, so that when our customers come to deploy the next element of their Nutanix infrastructure on Cisco hardware, they know that they're going to get a consistent installation process. They're going to get consistency in terms of that unit coming back up. They're going to reduce their time to operational value because it becomes a far smaller set of steps to be able to achieve the outcome that the customer wants. Intersight is an exceptionally powerful tool. And Intersight as a SaaS platform is continuously upgraded and updated. It's a very far removed platform from when we first launched it. And these integrations and critical elements that we build in this co-development partnership with Nutanix are key to building out this platform that's going to support our customers in terms of hyperconvergence now, but also what those new modern applications are. Back to you, Rob.
So thanks, guys. Hopefully now everyone's got a great understanding of that operational capability that we bring across the platform. NCM orchestrating all that software layer, Intersight orchestrating all that hardware layer, and then that great joint interaction between them two products to ensure we've got that capability for even zero-day deployment, especially when we're talking about maybe edge deployments on scale, etc., and really simplifying that ongoing management piece. But I think we've touched on, across all the videos, little bits of joint engineering. And I think really the value overall is that joint engineering piece, because that's where we start to get real simplification for a customer from that side of it. So it'd be great to just dig into that in a little more detail. And I think, Neil, from your perspective, what's the big joint engineering thing that you think adds the most value to this partnership?
I think we've touched on a few of them, but one we haven't touched on, which is this e-bonding, what we call e-bonding of support. So no matter how simplistic we make the operations of a platform like this, at some point something is going to go wrong. And we need to be able to reduce that mean time to recover from failure to as a lower time window as possible. Now, it can become a finger-pointing exercise. And what we were very clear from the outset and in the discussions with Nutanix is we wanted to e-bond our two support platforms together. And what that means is if a customer calls Cisco TAC because it's a problem with the combined platform, it auto-generates a trouble ticket in Nutanix. And it's one person to call. The entire thing is managed. It's not a case of us saying, no, hardware looks great. We've captured everything from Intersight. There's nothing in there. Sorry, problems over
Go
there.
speak to
Problems
Nutanix,
over there. It's not like that. It's genuinely, to the point of resolution, it's a combined effort between the two organisations. And similarly, if somebody chooses to call Nutanix because they feel that it is a software problem, that's e-bonded back the other way. So that generates a Cisco TAC. So at all points, regardless of how the customer comes to that, it's a joined ownership of problem resolution for a customer. And I think we often pay a little bit of lip service to that. But I think that's, the proof of the pudding in all of these things is never when it all goes right. The proof of the pudding is when ultimately it goes wrong and how quickly we.
But if we're entrusting this platform for our modern applications and the future of our business, that time to resolution is downtime. That's lost money and lost revenue in a lot of cases. So it is critically important, especially to the people that have to look after this on a daily basis.
Absolutely. From that perspective and this joint engineering element, Darren, what other bits and other elements do you think are an important part of the partnership between our two organisations?
Yeah, so just to reiterate, the support is something that has always been a very key part of Nutanix anyway. And Net Promoter Score is always high, so to have this great relationship works so well for us. But the integration is hugely important. We've got software needs to run on hardware, and the fact that we have joint engineering and development, the fact that our platform call the hardware, the underlying infrastructure to do the tasks, to do the expansions, to call the network, which we've spoken about previously. This is really what makes it a whole holistic solution that the customer doesn't have to always rely on other teams, whether it's support or for provisioning at all. And that's what makes it such a good relationship that we have now, and a solution as well, because people in large organizations just don't have time to go to different areas. They just want provisioning in these services very quickly. So it's quite good. But Rob, your thoughts on kind of what we've been talking about there?
Yeah, I think all these components, the network integration, the hardware integration, storage, operations, deployment, support, as a story together, that's just a great picture for a customer to look at and go, well, actually, I can get some of that operational simplicity that I've been yearning for the last 5 or 10 years. But that partnership extends wider than that. We look at things like data protection and the Cisco partnerships with Cohesity, which extend into Nutanix as well, and another such partnership. So it's a much wider ecosystem than the scope of what we're talking about today, which keeps extending that value from a customer perspective. And we saw that earlier in the year where we had a large semiconductor organization that needed to move platforms rapidly. We had a change in the market in the last sort of 12 months or so ago, which we're not going to talk about in detail here. But as you can imagine, someone in the semiconductor industry needed to make a change quite quickly. And that ability for this joint platform to deliver operational simplicity, speed of migration, support traditional and modern DevOps workloads, be scalable in the cloud but consistently commercial on premises, and have the tooling to move at pace and deploy at pace, that was a real differentiation for that organization, saying, why should I choose the Nutanix platform to deliver my future services on effectively? So it's a really important part of the journey effectively. So yeah, so guys, thank you for your time, and hopefully everyone watching can get a good idea now of what does this overall architecture look like. We've seen all the core components of it. We know how they interact. We understand the joint engineering. What we're going to then do is look in part 5 of what does that actually deliver from a business outcome perspective? What things can we engineer on top of this platform to add value? And actually, what does this expert panel I have here with me think are the top reasons and top tips for you to get going on this journey? So hopefully you can join us in part 5, and thank you for listening.